BBOR, Black Box Online Radio, coming to you from West Virginia. Black Box Ned 88 on Instagram for the bonus podcast. So yesterday on the channel, we did an upload about Robert Linkletter, who went on to become a Zodiac killer suspect, and that was more the focus of that upload. But as you'll see here from the title, today we will be talking about Robert's sister Diane, and this is going to be all tied into the same series. However, yesterday had a part 1 listed on it. This is going to be the second part in our series on Robert Linkletter, and we will do a third one that will just go out as part 3. I thought that this was a topic that had to be arranged thematically, like with theme and subject, and I thought it would only be appropriate to have a series on this one where we gave a specific upload to Diane Linkletter, and as you see from the title, she did go on to commit suicide in 1969 on the 4th of October. So before we say anything, we should say a big rest in peace to Diane Linkletter, and she committed suicide by jumping out of a 6th-floor window. And there's something that I read on a website called findadeath.com. I actually think it's a rather poor taste website, but they did share something that was what Diane Linkletter had on the front door to her apartment. And it reads, "To those of you entering, please give a minute's thought to the vibrations and feelings of which you brought with you. If they be of sound and sincere and honest quality, do enter. On the other hand, be they different from those qualities listed above, do enter, for I will try to understand. Signed, Lady of the Manor, M. Diane L." Those are just some nice things to hear, and I read that, of course, on findadeath.com, just citing the source. Now, with Diane Linkletter, this is definitely a subject that I didn't know too much about until very recently. I had never heard of Diane Linkletter until recently. Instead, I had heard of her father, Art Linkletter, of course, because of his connections to media, and as well as his son going on to become a suspect in the Zodiac killer mystery. But at the time, if my understanding of this is correct, Diane Linkletter's suicide received a lot of media attention, a lot of media coverage. People were looking into this because they were trying to blame this on LSD and saying that Diane Linkletter committed suicide because she was under the influence of LSD. I mean, you can think about October of 1969, and perhaps many accusations would be coming out like this. But I think that for this one, what we're going to do is we're going to go over to Amazon.com, actually, something that we don't do too frequently, and we're going to look at what you see in the image here. Diane Linkletter, a princess wrongly accused, and this is written by Tom Bleecker. That's the cover of the book here. And there's something that I would like to read here. It's just the description of Tom Bleecker's book on Diane Linkletter. On the morning of October 4th, 1969, 20-year-old Diane Linkletter died after she fell from a window of her 6th-floor apartment in West Hollywood. Because she was the daughter of famed radio and television personality Art Linkletter, the media jumped on the story based on their preliminary findings, labeled her death a suicide that was caused by her taking LSD. In subsequent reports, Diane Linkletter was painted as having a serious drug problem dating back to her early teens, as well as being severely despondent. Having never believed that Diane had a serious drug problem or that her death was a suicide, her former boyfriend and fiancé from high school, who today is a noted biographer and investigative journalist, reveals in this book the people and events that finally will dispel the notion that Diane ever had a serious drug problem and that her being emotionally despondent led to her the taking of her own life. Okay, so what I can say about that is, since I've been reading up about some things about the death of Diane Linkletter, I was really quite shocked because I just had this almost passion, desire, hunger for the truth, and I was like, well, then what actually happened and what on earth is going on? Because if you were to do a couple Google searches about the suicide of Diane Linkletter, you would find just that. There are things that are going to be showing that she was under the influence of LSD at the time of her death, and that's what happened. She jumped out of a 6th-story window, and she passed away 90 minutes later in a nearby hospital. But they even have a Snopes page on the death of Diane Linkletter, and the question that is posed on the Snopes page is, did Art Linkletter's daughter, Diane, jump out of a window while high on LSD? The claim: thinking she could fly, Diane Linkletter accidentally jumped to her death while high on LSD, and Snopes, of all places, has said this status is false. Their origins. On October 4th, 1969, at 9 a.m. on a Saturday morning, a 20-year-old girl jumped from her kitchen window. She died in a hospital, and an hour and a half later from the injuries she sustained. Two factors elevated this most ordinary of suicides to a news story that immediately caught the nation's interest and later formed a vital quote-unquote fact used to support a popular drug-related urban legend. The girl's identity and the widespread claim that she had been high on LSD at the time she went out the window. The girl was Diane Linkletter, the youngest daughter of beloved television and radio personality Art Linkletter's 5 children. Due to the sense of identification the public had with her famous father, her death became a symbol that was used to symbolize a tragedy that could be visited upon any home at any time. His honor, warmth, and innocence made many people feel they knew him, thus his pain became their own. Diane's death helped spread a widespread urban legend that lives on to this day, although it was around well before her fatal plunge. According to a popular story that warns young people about the dangers of drug use, some girl jumps from a window while on an acid trip because the drug fools her into thinking she could fly. The claims immediately made after Diane's death that she had been on LSD, coupled with her method of suicide, seemed to some to fit this existing cautionary tale, and afterwards her true demise was pointed to as an example of this legend coming true. Yet it wasn't true. And so I think this is a very good time for us to jump in. That was once again from Snopes. And as you heard, what Bleecker had written in the description of his book, when he's talking about how that this is a media sensationalized story that has been misrepresented, and we get this time and time again, no matter what case we're looking at, whether it's something like Diane Linkletter or the Zodiac Killer back in 1969, or even some more contemporary ones that are going on in the new millennium, the media really doesn't always give you the facts. In fact, somebody will write something, and even no matter if it's true or false, people will just start reprinting that narrative because it's more likely to sell. And that is one of the real downsides of for-profit media. However, as you see here, if Diane Linkletter did not commit suicide because she was high on LSD and she thought that she could fly and jumped out of a window, which I have to say reminds me of a very similar scene in the movie Reefer Madness going back to the 1930s. When did Reefer Madness come out? Was it 1936? I don't even remember the year, to be honest. I was just kind of pulling things out of nowhere, but I think there's a very similar scene in that movie. But that's, of course, not talking about LSD. That would come much later. If it wasn't the LSD, then what on earth caused her to have this type of reaction? Let's keep going here. Yet it wasn't true. Although members of her family attempted to blur the line between what happened to Diane and her use of drugs as a possible cause, we can only speculate upon their reasons for doing so, but we should note that it is not at all uncommon for those left behind after a suicide to work to convince others of the death that was one of the misadventures and not the deliberate ending of life. There is still a stigma attached to suicide, and families may view cloaking such matters in such a socially acceptable terms as one final act of loyalty they can perform to their loved one. And something about that is just, people don't always want to share their family's entire history to the general public, even if it's somebody who is somewhat famous like Art Linkletter, who is a name that was very well known to the public. People do not always want their family's personal business broadcast everywhere, so there is a motivation for anybody's family to blur the lines. Now, at this time, we're going to be introducing a different individual into the mix, and his name is Edward Durston, and he was 27 years old at the time, and he lived at 1211 Horn Avenue in West Hollywood. And he was in Diane's apartment at the time of the fall, and he was never considered a suspect in her death. And he, as I understand this one, he came over in the night, like at some point in the night, and then Diane even baked cookies in the oven, and then they spent the whole night talking. And once again, as we said, she passed away at 10:30 a.m., so that means that the jump that occurred 90 minutes before would have taken place around 9 a.m. So, that's actually only about a 6-hour time thing. You could say that that's talking all night in somewhat of a metaphorical term, but that's only about a 6-hour time frame. The thing with Edward Durston is, if I recall the way that this has been laid out, is that he even was in the apartment and he did have a view of her, but he was too far away from her to stop her from jumping out of the window. So, instantly people begin looking at him, and by people, I mean the internet in 2020, and they start to wonder, did this guy have some type of role? but we can see, and going back to Snopes, about 9 a.m., Edward Durston told detectives Diane Linkletter went into her kitchen and didn't return. Durston went looking for her, but failed to reach her as she approached the window. According to the report he gave to the Los Angeles homicide detective, Lieutenant Norman Hamilton, she went over to a window. I tried to grab her, and she went out. She was found lying on the sidewalk immediately below her kitchen. Minutes later, after interviewing Durston at the scene, Lieutenant Hamilton was convinced the girl had been in a despondent, depressed, and emotional state, and that she was concerned with her identity and her career, and that she had complained she could not be her own person. I also remember something about this, and I don't remember the exact source that I read this one in, but they were saying something about the comments that had been made by Art Linkletter, Diane's father, saying that she had not taken LSD at the time of her death, like in that morning. If there had been any LSD that had been taken, it was the night before, and I mean, I just wanted to throw that out there, and because as you kind of noticed here, that there is something that says that, I mean, they did not say that she took the LSD at any time during that 3 a.m. to 9 a.m. stretch when Durston was present. So, I mean, we don't necessarily know all these things 100%, and this is what I would really feel is going to be just going to be another thing that happened in the 1960s when we weren't there, so we won't know everything that happened. And I did remember seeing when I was actually just on Google and something came up about asking if Edward Durston was still alive, and he is not. He passed away, but they posted the date of his death on Google, and yes, he passed away on May 6th, 2010. He was 88 years old, and he would go on to become a screenwriter and filmmaker, and he did the 1970 film I Drink Your Blood. I'd be quite curious about that. However, there is a page actually here on Wikipedia that talks about Edward Durston, and his full name is David Edward Durston, as being connected to mysterious deaths. I know that I had read another one. They were saying 16 years later he was around someone else who mysteriously vanished, but I guess they just have one thing here. I mean, this is going down a pathway that maybe we can talk about in the future, just because it's in front of me now. It says, in 1985, Edward Durston accompanied actress Carol Wayne on vacation at the Las Hadas Resort in Manzanillo, Colima, Mexico. After the pair argued, Wayne reportedly took a walk on the beach. 3 days later, a local fisherman found the woman's body in the shallow bay. An autopsy performed in Mexico revealed no signs of alcohol or other drug use. Her death was ruled accidental. And then they have a big section here on Diane Linkletter. And we can say that the autopsy did confirm that Diane Linkletter died because of a result of the injuries that she sustained during the fall. Not anything to do with overdose, not anything to do with some other form of internal injury or any other form of assault. It says very clearly that she died because of the injuries that were caused by the fall. But a lot of the things here that are on Edward Durston's Wikipedia are things that have been already mentioned in this episode. And I would just like to say one more theory about what is going on with the death of Diane Linkletter, because I don't even know if you would call this a rumor. But another thing that they're talking about is Diane Linkletter's brother, Robert, would go on to become a suspect in the Zodiac Killer mystery. And as we said, Diane passed away on October 4th of 1969. Now that is exactly, more or less, okay, we should say not exactly, but more or less there's a 2-week gap in between two incidents in Zodiac activity. Lake Berryessa, which occurred on September 27th, 1969, where the Zodiac Killer is wearing the hood and tying up the victims, Cecilia Shepard and Brian Hartnell, and he is stabbing them. The only time the Zodiac Killer wore the hood and stabbed the victims. And then the Paul Stine murder in Presidio Heights on October 11th. So what is in the middle of these two events? Diane Linkletter's suicide, October 4th. I mean, like I said, it's almost exactly in the middle, depending on how many days you would count in a month and such. And then what happens 4 days after the murder of Paul Stine in Presidio Heights? The birthday of whom? Robert Linkletter. His birthday was on October 15th. And I think yesterday when I was talking about this in the Zodiac Killer Robert Linkletter Part 1 episode, maybe I said that he would have been 25 at the time. I think, I was reading a different website about the suicide of Diane Linkletter, and what they said about him was that he would have been 24, actually. And if he had been born in 1944, then yes, indeed, he would have been 24. And at the time of the Paul Stine murder, he would have been 2 weeks no, in the time of the Paulstein murder, he would have been 4 days shy of his 25th birthday, so he would have been 24 at the time. And I mean, that fits some criteria depending on whom you're talking to, but maybe some other criteria that would not be answered, because a lot of people believe that the Zodiac Killer was somebody that had a very high understanding of chemistry and math. And I mean, would Robert Linkletter fall into that position? But people definitely, the descriptions that we were mentioning yesterday show that he was someone who was of above average intelligence but did not show it all the time. Is there any significance to these numbers? One of the points, though, and I said we would go down some Zodiac Killer pathways with this one here, is just that I had never quite thought about the birthday angle if we were going to look at how this could be tied in together or some type of significance, because all of the Zodiac crimes occur within a 12-month span from December 20th of 1968 to October 11th of 1969. I never once thought about looking at the pathway that this could have been related to somebody's birthday, that is committed within a 12-month cycle in relation to the date of somebody's birth. That's just something to think about. Also, 25 years from World War II, that's another thing. Or perhaps there are arbitrary reasons for why the numbers were chosen. And is it possible at all that this individual named Diane Linkletter learned some information about her brother, or that she knew the whole time, or that she had figured it out, that he was the Zodiac Killer, and she couldn't deal with keeping the secret, or simply that he pressured her or coerced her? I would say that that's the biggest rumor, that, once again, Diane Linkletter did not have any injuries that were not accounted for by the fall, according to the wonderful internet. I have to confess that I have not read the autopsy of Diane Linkletter, but according to the internet, everything that happened to her, that the injuries that caused her death occurred during the fall. And also, I would like to say that the director John Waters made a 1970 film called The Diane Linkletter Story. I was reading on one website that it was actually made in 1969, and I thought that would have been impossible, but it was actually I believe it was recorded in 1970. I mean, if they were going to make something in 1969 immediately after her death, I think that that would be quite shocking. Not impossible exactly, but quite almost jumping into the situation in somewhat of a premature manner. However, though, if you would like to read more about this in the book, it is called Diane Linkletter, A Princess Wrongly Accused, and once again by Tom Bleecker. Now, this is one that I would really like to dive into. I always read like 2 or 3 books at the same time. That's why I rarely finish any of them. Part of me just thinks that this would be something very tempting, because, as I noticed with a lot of the ways in which the stories are presented by the mainstream media, you can see that they don't always give you closure. In fact, maybe the families would be able to obtain closure, but people who are trying to learn more about humanity and learn more about life, or just get this introduction to the story, saying things like, the mainstream narrative is that Diane Linkletter committed suicide because she was high on LSD and she jumped out a window, and then if you learn that, okay, maybe she wasn't high on LSD at the time when she jumped out of the window, then what happened? And there's also a theory, we just got to say this because this is something that has also been put out there, that she had some type of second wave trip. I am not somebody who's ever done LSD. I mean, if any of you guys have some firsthand experience, do these things actually happen where someone can just get into a type of tripping zone when they haven't taken LSD in 12 hours? It just kind of comes back. If anybody has any firsthand experience, please share some things about that in the comments section below. And also, this is a good time to say, if you have any other things you would like to talk about with the Linkletter connection to the Zodiac Killer mystery or the suicide of Diane Linkletter, please drop something in the comments section below. Share your ideas, share your point of view. Anything is welcome, and you can always hit the like button and subscribe if you like to follow along with these discussions. And I will say that we will be doing at least one more on the Linkletter connection to the Zodiac Killer mystery. And I mean, just also hearing about Ed Durston, I mean, there just sounds like there are some other things going on there that could be very, very important to the true crime world. And the more we learn about the California elites, the more questions we have than answers. And it's not always what is going on. It's more of just, how are these things happening? I think that that is the big question that we have to deal with during the during our mysteries of the California elites. But what I would say about this one is that I am very much tempted to go through this book, because I think that there could be some valuable information that someone who was close to Diane Linkletter would be able to share with us. And once again, we need to say rest in peace to Diane Linkletter. We will continue to explore the Linkletter connection to the Zodiac Killer mystery. Part of me feels like there could be some valuable information that we will be able to obtain. The other part of me thinks that this might be another wild goose chase. And there's even a third part of me that is thinking that maybe this is a very well composed narrative and there could be something genuinely valuable that we could learn from this. But at the same time, does that mean that Robert Linkletter actually committed the murders attributed to the Zodiac Killer? We will have to learn more to find out. All right, well, that's all for me now. Thank you to anybody who has listened to this. And once more, if we do a part 3 to this one, which I am certain we will, then it will be listed as part 3, and then we will have part 1. The suicide of Diane Linkletter will count as part 2, even though it doesn't have a number on it. And then there will be Zodiac Killer Robert Linkletter part 3. So it's going to go 1, this episode that you're listening to now, and then part 3. And you can follow along with links that have been pinned in. Okay, that's all for me now. See you on Instagram for the bonus podcast. Until next time.